All right, I think we're set to go. Let me turn off the music here, and I love having some background music, but I think I'm ready to go. I probably should have that on all the time in the background, but I haven't got that high tech yet. But welcome. This is, I don't even know what this is. This is January 17, 2021, and Random Thoughts from County Antrim, my podcast, David McDonnell. My half hour of some yarn, some stories, some historical information, and as always, my random thoughts. Now, I got a good new gig last week, and I got the gig on Sunday, but I didn't even know about it until Monday, so I wanted to tell you about it. Because not only is it an interesting gig, I didn't even get paid for it. But here's the deal. I did my podcast last Sunday from 6 p.m. till about 6:30, almost 6:30. And my family never listens to my podcast when it's live. They're upstairs while I'm downstairs in my little makeshift studio where I do my podcast. And I think they see me live too much anyway, especially during a pandemic. So I think they have no interest in watching me do my podcast live. So they go about their business while I do this podcast. And sometimes you can hear them upstairs, and you can hear our dogs upstairs doing their thing instead of watching me do my podcast. My wife, though, has a routine. She watches this podcast on Monday morning while she's having her morning cup of coffee. And I'm going to have a little sip of mine right now. I record this podcast on YouTube, and the links are on my Facebook page, and they're on my website as well for subsequent viewing. Or you can go to YouTube and just type in Random Thoughts from County Antrim, and voila, you'll see a whole list of all of my podcasts. They'll all just pop up. And that's kind of developed into our routine on Monday mornings. And we have internet TV now. And I have to confess, we've been very slow to move into the 21st century in our household. It's a fairly recent purchase. But it's a big screen TV, and it's in our living room, and it gets the internet on the television. So we watch this podcast Monday morning on YouTube, on the big screen in the living room. And my wife sees it for the first time on that Monday morning. And I see it. Obviously I saw it live, although I saw it looking into the camera. This is Monday morning's my first time to look at it as the world sees it. So I get to see it. I sit through it just to see how it went, watching it rather than looking into the camera. So that's what we did on Monday morning. We watched Random Thoughts from County Antrim on YouTube on the big screen. So what's my new gig? Well, evidently, I am the lead-in to Stephen Colbert and The Late Show. Because as soon as my podcast ended, and not a nanosecond later, it jumped out into a rebroadcast of Stephen Colbert and his Late Show, immediately following Random Thoughts from County Antrim. So if you'd been watching that Random Thoughts podcast, you would not have had time to change the channel or turn the television off before Stephen Colbert would have jumped on your screen and launched into his monologue. Now, I really don't mind that it happened that way. I guess I'm honored, I think, that I am the opening act for Stephen Colbert. But it would have been kind of nice had someone asked me if that was okay. And it would have been even nicer if they had offered to pay for my services. but they didn't. Now there's two theories of how this happened, and maybe there's a third, but I think two principal theories as to how and why this happened. And one is that the staff on The Late Show are trying to enhance the ratings of the show. Stephen Colbert just may not be a big enough draw for The Late Show. And there's a lot of very, very similar shows to his out there. It's not like the old days when there was Johnny Carson and that was it. There are many, many people out there doing wonderful shows in a similar format to Stephen Colbert and The Late Show. So they asked themselves, how do we get more people to watch The Late Show? And if not live, how do they get them to watch it on YouTube, the rebroadcast on YouTube? And then they came up with an answer. They knew all about the vast audience out there watching Random Thoughts from County Antrim. And they figured that many of them would be watching the broadcast, this podcast on YouTube, at least from time to time. And so they figured, why not link the two programs? They paid, I'm certain, they paid YouTube something so that when anyone ever watches Random Thoughts from County Antrim, they would immediately be followed by Stephen Colbert. And it's a brilliant idea on their part, I must confess. I just simply wish they would have told me all about it. And better yet, I wish they had paid me for it. Now, there's another theory I have on how and why this happened, and I think this other theory is that they used an algorithm. And they really weren't focusing on me, but rather they were focusing on you. Because you see, this algorithm identified the type of people who might enjoy The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. And that, of course, includes not only people who know about Stephen Colbert and have seen The Late Show before, but perhaps people who just don't watch it enough. And that algorithm identified you. People who are intelligent and are engaged and have a sense of humor, perhaps a bit irreverent. And that's my audience, at least I think it is. I think that's who you are. I don't think my audience is the kind of person who wears coyote skins and carries the Confederate flag around the United States Capitol. Or at least I hope that's not my audience. So the algorithm wanted my audience to tune in to Stephen Colbert. And thus they linked my podcast with the YouTube rebroadcast of The Late Show. Again, I have no problem with that. I just wish they had told me, and I wish they had paid me. Now, I suppose there's a third theory, and it has nothing to do with what the algorithm thinks about The Late Show or what the algorithm thinks about you. But rather, it's what the algorithm thinks about me. My devices just know who I am. Far too much, actually. And it figured, as I was watching Random Thoughts on my television, my algorithm figured, well, I might also like Stephen Colbert. And I do, actually. So maybe that algorithm part is right. But all that led me to another question. And that is, what the hell is an algorithm? And until last week, to be honest, I only had a vague idea what an algorithm was or what an algorithm is. But this week I did apply the Jared Kushner method of obtaining expertise. And that is, I Googled algorithm. And I spent about 10 minutes online researching algorithms. And now I'm an expert on it. And like Jared Kushner, when he spends 10 minutes online researching a question, he knows everything there is to know. He knows as much as anybody with a PhD in the subject. He can tell them what to do and then move on. And that's what I did. I read about algorithms, and now I know all about it. Now, before I did this research, I kind of thought that an algorithm was just this little munchkin who lived in my computer. In fact, another similar munchkin lives in all my devices. His first name was probably Al. That's why he's called Algorithm. But Al's job, is to figure out what I wanted and then get it to me. But his job really wasn't to wait for me to ask for it. Rather, his job was to anticipate what I want, even if I don't know myself. Indeed, that's somewhat of an annoyance, because I'm an adult. I'd like to make decisions myself. I think I'm capable of making decisions myself. But Al always wants to make decisions for me. And there are many, many examples of this. The other day, now that we're in winter, I made a comment to somebody that I'm not sure I have enough firewood to last me through the winter. I love having a fire in my fireplace on a winter evening. And I swear the story is true. I made the comment that I'm not sure I had enough firewood for my fireplace. And the next time I went on the computer, the first thing that popped up was an advertisement for a chainsaw. The algorithm just assumed that since I was talking about firewood, I must need a new chainsaw. Fact is, I got a nice chainsaw. My wife bought me a chainsaw. I think it was Father's Day a year or so ago. And it's battery operated. So I don't have to deal with the heavy and chainsaws, gas powered, that you got to yank the cord. And I don't have to worry about an electric chainsaw with a long extension cord. I just plug a battery in and it's good to go. And the salesman who sold it to her apologized, actually. He said there's only one problem with this chainsaw. And that is it takes a lot of power, drains the battery, and you can only use the chainsaw for about 20 minutes before the battery dies. And when my wife bought this and gave it to me for Father's Day, she apologized as well. She told me the weakness, that it can only last about 20 minutes before you have to recharge the battery. I said, that's not the weakness. That's a strength. Simply means I only have to work cutting wood for about 20 minutes. And then I have an excuse, a good excuse to just quit. To me, that's a perfect gift. I'll give you another example. I bought a smoker when the pandemic hit in the spring. And I've been teaching myself how to smoke meat. I figured since I can't go out to a restaurant, and I'm likely to be homebound for who knows how long, at least I could eat well. So I buy, when I can, big chunks of meat, whenever it's available at a local market. And then I put it in a smoker. And of course, I don't know what I'm doing, so every time I do that, I have to look it up. What kind of cut of meat is it? It's a breast, it's a rump, it's a shoulder, it's a roast, rump, whatever the heck it is. And then I got to look at the weight, and then I got to look up what's a good cooking temperature, and how long should it cook, and what's the internal temperature that meat should be when it's done. So I have to look that up every time I put meat in the smoker. But now, whenever I go online, what do I get? Immediately, without asking, I get recipes for smoking meat. I get ads for the best place to buy meat. The other day, I even got a pop-up, just came up right on my screen. And it was a company that ships meat to your door, right to your door. You order it in a catalog and it ships you in dry ice meat to your door throughout the pandemic. Now, how did these guys know that I was interested at all in meat or smoking meat? Well, the algorithm told him. And I've been dealing with algorithms for quite some time. I mean, I used to think it was a Netflix thing. You know how whenever I watch a movie or a TV series, I get the message. If you like that, you probably will like this. And it gives me a recommendation. And I've been known to watch foreign language films and movies and TV series with English subtitles. My family actually hates me for this. All I have to do is turn on one of those shows and the living room disappears. But I found some interesting shows. I mean, some of it's crap. Obviously, they're not any better at making shows around the world than they are here. But some of them are quite good. But now, whenever I go on Netflix, what I get is a suggestion for a television series in Ukrainian or a movie in Swedish. I can't even find on Netflix anymore a good English-speaking program because the algorithm just won't let me. But it's more than just Netflix. The algorithm is everywhere. It pops up on your computer, and your phone, your television, your GPS. It thinks it knows you better than you know you. And the problem is that by telling you what it thinks you want, sometimes prevents you from trying anything different. And I thought, and it's one of the concerns I have with algorithms, and I'll talk a little bit more, but I wanted to mention to you first a Persian guy. His name is Mohammed. I got to read this because it's difficult to read for an English speaker. It's Mohammed ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. And I butchered that pronunciation. I apologize to anybody who speaks Arabic. But he's a 9th century Persian mathematician. In fact, in the year 820, he was appointed as the chief astronomer and librarian for the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. Isn't that a pretentious name for a place, for a facility? The House of Wisdom. I should call my house the House of Wisdom. But the last part of his name that I butcher when I tried to pronounce it is al-Khwarizmi. And that was kind of Latinized, and when they were putting that, moving it first to Latin before it came to English, it was Latinized as algorithmi. And that's the source of the word algorithm, a 9th century Persian. But algorithms were around a lot longer than him. And the concept kind of evolved from ancient Greek mathematicians. And you spent a lot of time working through mathematical formulas for predicting behaviors. And that simply means that algorithms have been bugging people for about 3,000 years. Now, of course, algorithms aren't all bad. Our brain uses them all the time. We sometimes call ourselves people of habit, creatures of habit. But it may simply be that our brains are just merely using our own created algorithm. And for example, I've gone to certain stores many times and usually found what I wanted in a certain store. And then the next time I need something similar, I probably go to the same store. And I don't stop to think about all the different options there are in the universe for me to go to find this item. I've sort of built in my brain this algorithm that if I go there, I can probably find it. And the flip side is true as well. I think if you've had a bad or mediocre experience somewhere, I'll probably never go back. And that's not to make a statement. It's just the algorithm working in my brain simply omits that place when I'm trying to think through the options of where to go. Now, I think the problem that I have with algorithms is that I'm a storyteller and I'm a writer. And I do need to recognize algorithms when I'm crafting a story. And then I need to intentionally ignore them. because misdirection sometimes is a key to a good story. And I think stand-up comics are the best at this. They'll lead into a joke. The algorithm in your brain will tell you where this is going. And then at the last minute, that punchline is coming. The comic will just turn it around and do something completely different. And that's what makes it funny. Mystery writers are good at this as well. A good screenwriter is good at this. They'll plant clues so that the ending is not considered preposterous. But from your experiences, you will think the story is going one direction, and then your brain is convinced about where the story is going until you get to the end, and then you realize it's not. You've been misdirected into another direction. And my better stories do this, not all by any means, because I have a long way to go to perfect my craft. Although it is a difference, I think, between a stand-up comic and a storyteller, because a comic only has seconds to get you leaning one way before turning the next, to get to the punchline. A storyteller has a little more time. I can plant the seed early on in a story, move a story with an intriguing set of circumstances going this way, and then jump the other way for a quick ending. A misdirection, if you please, and kind of play a little trick on the algorithm in your brain. K-Man story, which I've told many times, and I told on this podcast, I think is but one example, one of the better examples of that. So I guess we have to have algorithms. We know what they are thanks to ancient Greeks, to 9th century Persians, and they're dominating our life thanks to 21st century computer programmers. And they're leading people from random thoughts from County Antrim right into the Late Show with Stephen Colbert. I'm not going to send Stephen a cease and desist letter, but I am going to ask for some compensation for my lead-in to his YouTube rebroadcast. So that's it for now. Please take a look at my website, clandonald.net. Take a look at my books, Clandonald and By the Horse of Guinness. Send me a note on clandonald@gmail.com. Like and share me on Facebook, Clandonald. Don't bother sending me a tweet, and don't bother sending me a TikTok. I wouldn't know what to do with either one of them. So I'm going to say goodbye, but don't forget, stay tuned for The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Goodbye.